1.9 billion euros. Vanished. Gone. Money that never existed. Not hidden, not stolen. Never there in the first place. Germany's most valuable fintech company, a DAX 30 titan, 24 billion euros in market value, audited by Ernst & Young for over a decade, endorsed by regulators, celebrated by investors, trusted by thousands of employees. And 1/4 of its entire balance sheet was pure fiction. This is the story of Wirecard, the German Enron, a corporate fraud so massive, so audacious, it shattered the credibility of Europe's entire financial oversight system. Munich, 1999. The dot-com bubble is inflating. Tech startups are everywhere. Two entrepreneurs launch a small company called Infogenie AG. The idea? Process credit card payments for online gambling sites. Not glamorous, but potentially profitable. The company limps along. The dot-com bubble bursts in 2000. Infogenie nearly dies. But then, in 2002, a man named Markus Braun steps in. Braun is Austrian, a computer science PhD, soft-spoken, intense. He wears all black every single day. Black turtleneck, black trousers, black shoes. He looks more like a philosopher than a CEO. Braun takes control, renames the company Wirecard, and starts selling a simple promise. We will process your payments anywhere. Online, offline, Asia, Europe, the Middle East, no problem. For years, Wirecard grows slowly. No headlines, no glamour, just grinding work. By 2005, revenues are around 40 million euros. Modest, respectable, nothing to raise eyebrows. But here's the thing about Markus Braun. He's not interested in modest. He's not interested in respectable. He wants to build a global empire. And to do that, he needs a story the world will believe. The story begins in Southeast Asia. Wirecard starts claiming explosive growth in markets like the Philippines, Singapore, and Malaysia. They're processing payments for thousands of merchants, digital goods, gaming credits, travel bookings. The numbers are staggering. By 2015, Wirecard reports revenue of 771 million euros. Profits are soaring. The stock price is climbing like a rocket. Investors can't get enough. Wirecard isn't just a fintech company anymore. It's a symbol, proof that Germany can produce tech giants, that Europe can compete with Silicon Valley. In September 2018, the unthinkable happens. Wirecard replaces Commerzbank in the DAX 30, Germany's most prestigious stock index. 30 elite companies. Wirecard is now in the same league as BMW, Siemens, and Deutsche Bank. The celebration is euphoric. Markus Braun is photographed smiling. The black turtleneck man has conquered German finance. Analysts fall over themselves to praise him. One calls Wirecard the PayPal of Europe. Another says, this is the best growth story in the DAX. The company's market value hits 24 billion euros. That's more than Deutsche Bank, more than Lufthansa, more than the entire GDP of countries like Cyprus or Iceland. But this is where things get dark. Because behind the billions in reported profits, behind the gleaming headquarters in Aschheim, behind the DAX 30 celebration, there's a secret. A very dirty secret. And if you're wondering how deep this goes, stay with me. Because what the auditors were about to discover would destroy everything. We'll be right back. The first cracks appear in 2015. A small investigative team at the Financial Times in London starts digging. They're looking at Wirecard's Asian operations, and something feels off. The numbers Wirecard reports from Asia don't match the actual market data. The company claims to dominate payment processing across the region, but independent merchants say they've never heard of Wirecard. One FT journalist, Dan McCrum, keeps asking questions, simple questions. Where exactly are these profits coming from? Who are the customers? Can we verify the cash balances? Wirecard's response is aggressive. They sue the Financial Times. They attack the journalists personally. German regulator BaFin steps in. But not to investigate Wirecard. BaFin investigates the journalists. Let that sink in. The regulator responsible for protecting investors opens a criminal probe against the reporters who were trying to expose a fraud. Wirecard stock keeps climbing. Institutional investors pour in billions. The message is clear. Trust the system. Trust the auditors. Trust the DAX 30. But there's a problem. A quiet problem that nobody wants to acknowledge. Every year, Ernst & Young signs off on Wirecard's accounts. Every year, they confirm that nearly 2 billion euros in cash exists in trustee accounts in the Philippines. Every year, nobody actually verifies it. And this single oversight destroys it all.
So, how did they do it? How do you convince the world that 1.9 billion euros exists when it doesn't? Here's the simple version. Wirecard claimed it needed to hold large amounts of cash on behalf of its merchant clients. This money supposedly sat in trustee accounts at two small banks in the Philippines, BDO Unibank and the Bank of the Philippine Islands. When EY auditors asked for confirmation of the balances, Wirecard provided documents, bank statements, account confirmations. Everything looked official, except the documents were fake. The bank officers who supposedly signed the confirmations didn't exist. The account numbers led nowhere. The entire 2 billion euro cash pile was a spreadsheet fantasy. But here's what nobody tells you. This wasn't just one lie. It was a web of hundreds of lies. Shell companies in Mauritius, fake consulting contracts in Singapore, round-trip transactions designed to create the illusion of revenue. Wirecard wasn't processing payments for real merchants. They were moving money in circles and calling it growth. And who was getting hurt? Real people. Pension funds that invested retirees' savings. Small investors in Germany who believed in the PayPal of Europe story. Employees who held Wirecard stock in their retirement accounts. When the truth came out, thousands would lose everything. Now, this is where the real story begins. Because even with all the evidence mounting, the system was still protecting Wirecard. We'll be right back. June 2020. The clock is ticking. EY auditors fly to the Philippines. They need to physically verify the 1.9 billion euros. They go to the banks, they ask to see the accounts, and the banks say, "What money?" The accounts don't exist. The cash doesn't exist. Everything was forged. June 16, EY refuses to sign off on Wirecard's 2019 accounts. The news hits the market like a bomb. Wirecard shares collapse 60% in a single day. June 18, the board admits the obvious. The 1.9 billion euros probably never existed. June 19, Markus Braun resigns. He's arrested the same day. June 25, Wirecard files for insolvency. A 24 billion euro company, wiped out in 10 days. The panic is absolute. Thousands of employees walk into the headquarters in Aschheim. Security guards turn them away. Their key cards don't work. Their jobs are gone. Bank accounts freeze. Pension funds marked to zero. An 85% drop in shareholder value in less than 2 weeks. Investors around the world stare at their screens in disbelief. The German Enron is real, and it just collapsed on live television. But wait, it gets worse, because what happened next exposed a failure even bigger than Wirecard itself. We'll be right back. Markus Braun faces criminal trial in Munich, charges of fraud, breach of trust, and market manipulation. If convicted, he could spend over a decade in prison. But Braun insists he's innocent. He claims he was the victim, that others ran the fraud without his knowledge. Meanwhile, the real mastermind? Jan Marsalek, Wirecard's COO. He vanished, literally. In June 2020, Marsalek flies to the Philippines, then disappears. His trail goes cold. Intelligence agencies suspect he fled to Russia, protected by connections in the shadows. He's still on the run today. The money? Gone. 2.3 billion euros in shareholder value destroyed. 3.2 billion euros in debt that creditors will never recover.
Tens of thousands of lives damaged. One victim was a 73-year-old retired teacher in Bavaria. She invested her entire life savings, 120,000 euros, in Wirecard. She lost everything, every single euro. Ernst & Young faces criminal investigations. BaFin faces public humiliation. The entire German financial system is forced to confront a brutal truth. They protected a fraud and punished the truth tellers. What can we learn from the Wirecard scandal? First, trust is fragile. The entire DAX 30 ecosystem, auditors, regulators, banks, investors believed in something that wasn't real because it was easier to believe than to question. Second, systems fail, not just occasionally, catastrophically. When gatekeepers are compromised, lazy, or afraid, ordinary people pay the price. Third, nothing is too big to collapse. Wirecard was a DAX 30 company, audited by one of the world's top firms, regulated by Germany's top authority, and it was a house of cards. This could happen to you. Maybe not the DAX 30, but a stock you hold, a pension fund you trust, a company you work for. The lesson of Wirecard is not about one corrupt CEO. It's about a system that rewards appearance over reality. And that system hasn't changed. If stories like these matter to you, subscribe, because the next one is even darker. A company that promised to revolutionize transportation, billions in funding, Silicon Valley's brightest minds, and a secret that sent the founder to prison for fraud. This was the Greed Files.